Well, hello everybody. Thank you for taking the time out of this great conference to come in here and hear what I have to say about talent management. I am proud to represent the contracting career field. The contracting program in the Department of Defense and in the Army, the CP-14, is comprised of business specialists, small business representatives, contract negotiators, contract specialists, agreements officers, contracting officers, quite a diverse out of the branches of the tree of the contracting career field. We have many opportunities. And I'm proud to take the opportunity today to tell you a little bit how we want to get after talent management. Now, you've probably heard many people, maybe probably here at this association, talk about what they think about contracting. We're a very small career field, actually. In the Department of Defense, there's only about 24,000 of us in the entire Department of Defense as professionals. I'm happy to know that in the Army, we have 8,000. I'm going to tell you about those. But as a small career field, we get an awful lot of assistance. We get a lot of help. I've got a lot of professional expert advice helping us hone our craft. So with that, I'd like to go to the next slide, please. We're comprised of 8,000, 1,000 approximate military, 51 Charlies. We have 7,000 civilians. We're at over 300 locations around the globe. We did approximately 253,000 contracting actions in FY18 at a procurement amount of $98 billion. That was everything from BAAs, broad agency announcements, OTAs, other transaction agreements. We did contracts, modifications, and we administer those contracts to any one time. So we're very busy, and as a very busy, small workforce, we're often overwhelmed. And we help the soldiers from the war front to the home front. We buy everything they may need as in capability or to allow them to have the tools that they need and to take care of their families even. The workforce at large at 8,000, as I said, over 300 locations. What has been happening over time is that they've been left to their own devices to move into their next positions or any position. Talent management over the past few years has been nothing but usajobs.com. And if you're familiar with usajobs.com, you will know that if you apply and you would like to be referred to receive an interview, you better say you are an expert in everything. It's a flawed system. What I'd like to talk to you about today is how we're going to operate within that flawed system, as there are many hardworking people putting that together to try to reinvent it. But how can we, in that system, take it for what it is and help our people achieve their aspirations, to help contracting professionals know that they are taken care of, that they're going to be given the tools. And that's why I look at competency, capability, and capacity. Those 3 C's make a big difference. And to my industry partners, we can't do this without you. So we also have to know, are we competent in your ways that you want to do business? And can we engage? That's bringing us to a level of sophistication that we've never had before. We're being challenged to be innovative, to be risk takers. We have an awful lot of laws, regulations, and policies that govern what we do. It's very complicated. What we strive to do is to learn how to navigate those laws, regs, and policies so that we're compliant, but we support the soldiers. We do that with our industry partners here today. As you look around at AUSA, these were awarded, funded in R&D by the contracting career field in the Army. Let me tell you a little bit about the principles that we're using in our talent management strategic plan. If we could have the next slide. Our principles, of course, are nested in the Army Human Resource Capital Plan. We have to start there. No one does leadership better than the Army. You can go back couple hundred years. We have great regulations on doing that. So we are the best at that. But we're oftentimes in these career fields not so good at communicating and helping that done. So we know it's an investment in our contracting professionals. And what is that return on the investment? You've heard people say that doing contracting with the Army is cumbersome, it's slow, it's this and that. If you peel it back and you have a competent, capable workforce with the capacity, those cycle times can change. So how do we get them there? So we also look at the systems approach and where are those leaders? I know many of us have probably struggled from time to time with a supervisor that we often wonder, how did that person get that position? They don't seem to be able to help me navigate. They're not telling me this or that. And quite honestly, I feel like I can't get the right information I need. I think that's our fault as we look in the mirror because we did not prepare that individual for that particular position. We did not give them the tools so that they could communicate with you and collaborate with you. And so we have to start with leaders. The next principle, of course, is balancing the organizational needs with the individual. I oftentimes say, I'm not your travel agent, but I'll do my best. I'm not the person who's going to help you get to that particular location at that particular grade level and that. What I can do is establish a framework that you can operate in and know that you have people that will speak to you about where you're at in that particular principle. The job person fit, we must optimize every position. We have contracting officers today, agreements officers, contract specialists that are working hard. In the morning, they're working on this action, which may be buying an HVAC unit, a generator, doing a service. And then in the afternoon, they find themselves supporting the Apache, the Patriot, or other systems. That in itself says, how do we find the right person and have the right soldier in the right place in the battlefield? And so we're going to be striving hard to say, what are your competencies now at this time in your career? And let's make sure that we put you in a position where you can succeed and not feel that overwhelming aspect of failure every day when you go home. We want you to have a quality of life. And to do that, we must empower you. Empower you to have that quality of life that you so much deserve, that we know that you are paying many times to support our Army. You're giving up in the evenings, maybe that baseball game of your son or your daughter, or any of those other activities that you're not able to go to because you were striving to make sure that we can get that contract awarded or administered to support the soldier. So a framework is vital to that. Let's go to the next slide, please. How do we get after that? Well, we knew with 8,000 individuals across the Army and across the globe, there's only one way to do this, and it was to bring together all the SESs and general officers that are in the contracting career field and establish a board of directors. We've done that as our first step, because if you take those individuals and you say, now you're accountable and responsible for those 8,000 no matter where they're at, we take talent management to a level where it's meaningful. Because talent management to me is meaningless if you don't have a name with that individual. You're more than a statistic. You're more than a number. You're an individual. And we need to know your names, and we need to know what your aspirations actually are. So a board of directors comes together and we will look. Where do we need recruitment? How do we need to operate differently? Job fairs, universities. How do we go out and talk to our colleagues, maybe in industry, that may want to come into the Army from a different perspective to support the soldier and the mission? We will take those in consideration. We'll look at places geographically, everywhere from Huntsville to Anchorage, to Hawaii to Germany, and say, how do we recruit and how do we handle that? So those board of directors are very important. We start then go into the management of talent. So what you're really talking about is recruit, train, and retain. But you got to have a framework to do that, taking us all the way down into the retention. Metrics. We got to have metrics. You got to know if you're baselining whether this activity is meaningful or not. So we've worked hard to come up with competency, capacity, and capability metrics that we roll up, and we can look down into an organization of where that organization is, anywhere in the globe, across the globe, and say, how are they doing in this respect? And then we can come in and help those individuals to say, how can we do this? Key to this is knowing where your career map is. Many of us grew up with the pyramids. You start here at the foundation, you start in the mailroom, and someday you're going to be CEO. That only happens on Hallmark, I think, oftentimes. It's a certain percentage that can go to the very top of the pinnacle. If you go to the next slide, what I like to use, somewhat of an eyesore, but this is the career map. This is how we get after it for our folks to say, you come in, we've got the Defense Acquisition Workforce Improvement Act. We have DOTA funds available to us that help us be the engine to help resource this. But we have the Defense Acquisition University, where you're going to get a foundational training and education in the actual trade craft of contracting. But at the same time, you also need to get some experience. You need to be moved. You may want to go into leadership development programs. We have many of those to offer. If there's any takeaway I'd like you to take from this particular career map, is that it's not a pyramid, and it's a life cycle. It's life cycle for your 35 to 40-year career. Or maybe you've joined us a little later in your career, that maybe it's a 10 to 15 career. But we can map you with this to help you get the right education and training you need. Next slide, please. As an individual, how do we get after it? As I said, we have to be working a human resource system that is underway of being rebuilt. Many times, as I said, usajobs.com, you go in and you're saying, I'm not really an expert, but I know I'd like to have this opportunity, so you mark expert. We got to change the way that we are selecting individuals. We need to be standardized. We cannot torture people to go in usajobs.com, maybe not get referred, and then if they get an interview, do you get any feedback? Do you get any feedback to help you know how to prepare yourself for the next interview? We do it as contracting officers every day. They're called debriefings. We need to debrief our talent as into why you were not selected, so that you know, do I need to improve my resume? Do I need to improve my interview skills? Or maybe I've got a skill gap that I need to improve and fill. Meaningful things like that are not that difficult, but we need to put in the discipline, and we will write policy to mandate that so that it is there. And also in the selection, we know your talent. If you've applied for this position, you probably have applied for other positions. You have a family, or you have other needs that you need to take care of. I cannot call you and say, stick with me. I think we're going to offer you a job, but it may be about 2 or 3 months. And you're like, you help me pay rent? What, my mortgage? How are you helping me here? I don't understand. Because if I go out, and I know there's no guarantees in federal government oftentimes, I'll get that call where you passed over a position because you really wanted this one. We need to do much better at shortening that timeline. That's where we only want to interview those that we think go quickly and within days, not weeks, not months, make a selection so that we can move on. When we do Once we've got the selection done, we also want to take in consideration not all new recruits. So as I said, how do we get by having to go through that angst of applying? Maybe I don't interview well, and I'm afraid that in a 30-minute period, somebody's going to make a decision of whether I've got this job. And I've worked so hard for so many years, and now it comes down to 30 minutes. That's ridiculous. Not everybody interviews. I get sweaty palms. I got sweaty palms now. But I mean, when you think about it, we've got to look at how do we bring you in a developmental assignment? How do we lateral you? Then you don't have to compete. Take a step sideways to possibly take 2 steps forward. Take a step backward to take 2 steps forward after a while. That needs to be explained to you to say, I don't understand. And if you understand it, then you will be more liable to do it. So as we go through the developmental assignments, we will look for laterals. Those board of directors looking for, I know Heather's got the talent. She's got the potential. There's a job opening over here. I can talk to one of those board of directors and say, why don't we just lateral Heather right to that job? Instead of you going through a process of competing and promoting and going through all that. That takes months. That's something we need to take in consideration that we can do. But you also want to have the opportunity of saying, I've never lived in a big urban city. I don't know what it's like. So let's get you a developmental assignment where you go to the big city and you say, this isn't so bad. Or I've never done construction. Let's get you to the Army Corps of Engineers and see. Or I've never done major systems acquisition. Put you in that, and then you find out that we turn the pages of the FAR. We do not trip over them. That once you've got that foundation, you can do anything in this career field and never allow anybody to tell you differently. As we go down through on the developing the employee, even rotating, just the mentoring, just the sheer talking to you by a competent, capable supervisor makes a big difference in your life. Contracting is not something that we usually go to undergrad for and come out. I oftentimes ask people, I said, how many knew they were going to be a contracting officer when they were 19 years old? How many people knew they were going to be a small business specialist when they were 20 years old? No one. Engineers apply themselves in school, undergrad, graduate school. We take an awful lot of different skills and bring those together and say, it's a niche market. Because once you get into contracting, you're either going to love it or you're going to leave it, right? And you're going to understand it. But once you're in it, then we have that responsibility then to nurture you. The leader development, and that's how we do that. There's so many programs. And I know that not everyone will get selected this year, but there's next year. But there's those opportunities to allow your leadership to know you're interested, but I can only go during the summer. I've got children, my spouse, my significant other needs to take care of that. You can do that in the career mapping and take that into consideration so that we can work with you on that. Summits and workshops and all the other things we do. A complicated environment of contracting, the laws, the regs, the policies. As I'm standing here, we probably changed some policy and sent out a policy alert. So when you get back to your office, you're like, wow, now I got to read this. I've got this. So we constantly are having education. Continuous education in our career field is essential to success. Let's go to the next slide, please. So as I try to summarize about the career field, at the opening I said 253,000 actions at $98 billion. You break that down into those 8,000, we have about 2,800 warrants, meaning that we have contracting officers, agreements officers, grants and cooperative agreements officers. Those individuals, as stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, can sign their name. To my industry partners, those definitely are the individuals you would like to speak with. Get to know, work up a working relationship to communicate. Because the great ones, The great ones in my profession know the importance of communicating to our industry partners. If you had to break it down even further and you say, if there's only 2,800 warranted officers, those that say we're a little slow at what we do, that factors in to about 135,000 actions an hour. Unbelievable. $33 million a year per that contracting officer. They're working hard, and we know that. But we know that the mission that they're supporting is important to this national security. Our average salary. This is a lucrative business. We do believe that we have commensurate pay for the work. The median average of $83,000 is about $9,000 higher than the Air Force or the Navy. Now one would say, maybe we work harder. I don't think so. And not in our career field, they're working hard too. But in our profession, it's the journeyman level. The 12s and 13s make up the body of the 8,000 people. And that median pays there. So if I was thinking about entering into this career field, it may take you from a GS7 to GS5, 5 to 7 years to get to that median average. Or if you're coming in commensurate with your skill set already, we can take that in consideration, and you can go up even higher from that. So it is, I believe, one of the best career fields out there. After 35 years of doing, and I've been an 1102, a contracting person, my entire 35 years. 22 years with the Air Force, 5 years with OSD, and then the remainder with the Army. And I was able to do that with a strong foundation, but I had a talent management program. So it is our commitment from myself and the other general officers and SESs in the Army contracting career field that we're going to bring talent management to the Army. And we're committed to it. And that we want you all to be able to achieve your aspirations in support of the greatest Army in the land, right? So with that, next slide, I'd ask you if you have any questions for me. Open up. Yes.
So, I think. Yeah, so I think, excellent presentation, Mr. Hazlett. One
Thank
of the
you.
questions that I have is, well, two questions. One, and I like that you mentioned developmental assignments. I think that's a big deal. I know that it's helped me tremendously in my career so far. One of the things that, and I'm sure you are aware of, is that sometimes with developmental assignments, as you mentioned, it's 8,000. We're doing a lot, processing over 250K actions. We tend to sometimes get caught up in that mission, right? Element of it, where most times what trumps those developmental assignments is the fact that, hey, right now we simply can't afford to have X individual go and support a developmental assignment. One of the things I found to be extremely successful in the past when I was at the Corps of Engineers is how they treated those development assignments, almost as though it was an internal announcement where you did not necessarily have to get supervisor approval. You could put just like how you would if an internal vacancy announcement came out, you can apply and then be selected. Has the board, this meeting, have they considered that when it comes to development assignments? Because sometimes in the field what you get are the people that the supervisors want to let them, for a couple of months.
And what is your name?
Jordell Charles.
Jordell?
Yeah.
I will tell you that, because I created that program at the Corps of Engineers. And a lot of developmental assignments don't have to be overwhelming for the office you leave behind, because your colleagues, like, please don't leave me, it's the third quarter or the fourth quarter, right? You got to think that through, but we also can do lateral exchanges. Sunk costs at the same grade in the network that we know there's somebody here in this office at Redstone that would like to move over and do something at headquarters ACC. And it reconnects people from the headquarters back to the organization and allows this individual to maybe see something. And the commute, the same, right? We can work things like that. So we got to look at those lateral developmental assignments too, so that the office is getting a capable, competent person at that level to fulfill the work. And the other question goes back to investment. if people are my number one resource, and if I'm going to improve, then I have to be willing to take risk with my investment. And that may mean that I will shoulder that responsibility to allow them to go for a developmental assignment. But we can look at the length of time. It does not have to be 6 months or a year. How much time do you need to possibly understand how they are operating so that we can benefit when you come back to my office? You're bringing some new ideas, some new ways of doing business that I'm benefiting from. So we need to look at doing those for possibly 90 days. A shorter time frame so that we can get more people to use those. But thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you. And then the other one that I had real quick was on the, you mentioned about the right people, right fit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know you talked about the recruitment efforts, you know. Have we looked at, so internally, for those who currently are sitting in positions, you know, is primarily the focus, this is just a point of clarification, is the focus primarily on those coming in, fresh talent, new talent, or is it, hey, existing talent, you know, because that's the challenge, right? So, I mean.
Absolutely not. I mean, life cycle. Life cycle talent management means, I was sitting in a meeting and we always turn to Generation X. How are we dealing with Generation X? And I'm like, what are we dealing with the baby boomer here, right? I still need to be challenged. I need to be educated. I too need to be taken in consideration. And that's very important that we're there from the continuous life cycle on that. Yes?
Thank you, I'm Rena Morgan. And I do appreciate your presentation and the vision that you brought to the table, because it is encouraging to see that we're moving forward. I do have two questions. One is, can you elaborate a little bit more on the contracting mobile training teams that you mentioned? Could you tell us a little bit about
They're contracting what?
mobile training teams? MTTs?
The training teams. So getting back to training and how we do it, there's many ways to do it, right? I mean, sometimes you need that hands-on experience. Oftentimes we can do train the trainer and try to send it down that way. We do an awful lot with micro-learning videos. We've learned that you sitting there are more apt to do like a YouTube video. So we've created some micro-learning videos, such as fixed price incentive firm target, the aspect of doing OTAs, and that we made these videos that are only 5 to 7 minutes. I mean, for some of us, we can remember, how does a bill become a law? So you're not going to become an expert, but what you're going to do is be told that. Webinars, very popular. So we're looking at all kinds of different methods of training, you know, and sometimes if we have something in the small business area that we need to get out and we want to do that, we may take a team of 5 to 6 people and go to activities and try to train them right on the spot quickly to get up to it, because there's nothing better than having somebody you can ask questions with and have an exchange with. So, thank you.
And my other question was, yesterday in the presentation, they mentioned something about encouraging more Gen Z to join the Army. My question is, what are we doing for the civilian portion of the Army? How are we preparing not just to attract more Gen Z and Gen X to our area, but how are we preparing to deal with these great thinkers for the workforce that's already here?
Yeah, it's a very valid point. Like, we lived through some years ago the bathtub, right? That there was a bathtub of people coming in and that we were going to be in this way. Well, people like myself never left, and people caught up. We no longer have a bathtub, right? But there is nothing better, I think, in recruitment than the ambassadors that are the 8,000 contracting professionals. But for them to be ambassadors, I have to take it granted that they are passionate about their positions, they're happy with where they're working, and there's no one better than to talk to the sons and daughters of your neighbors, of other individuals, because we know contracting is not taught as mainstream in undergrad. So mainly you're just going to come from different associations such as this, giving us an opportunity to foot stomp our career program, but also going out and doing that. And I think that as you find, you will usually have people that are high-performing organizations will draw people that want to be a part of a high-performing organization. So I adhere to, I got to clean up my own backyard before I go out in the community and start telling everybody else to clean up their yard. So this talent management, the framework ourselves and the strategic plan is that start to do that. And I believe that it will take care of itself for the recruitment, because we are going to keep continuing to go out to the job fairs and those to bring them in. Thank you.
Hello, Marina Adams. And great presentation, very encouraging, exciting. One of the things that I keyed in on was employee voice in their career, because a lot of times mission trumps an employee's own voice and how they want to go in their career. My question is there any opportunities for those individuals who may have spent 10 to 30 years in contracting or military or government, and now they're looking towards retirement, but they love what they're doing and possibly would like to do part-time? How do we keep the talent, not letting them retire, letting them go to a part-time, and then are there more opportunities for that?
Well, there's a lot of ways I could answer that question. So let me try by saying that a work environment that permits telecommuting, the part-time, we have programs that will allow spouses or other folks to come in and share desk space, work half part-time and do that. There's many programs, and that's where I come back to even the competency of knowing how to navigate the HR system, to know these programs exist. We've got to do a better job of knowing that our supervisors, our leaders are communicating and know what's available to them, because that goes back to all the questions we're talking about. Because a competent, capable, with the capacity to do the job, they're going to be able to come in and do other things as supervisors that aren't being done today as well. But we have many programs that are offered up to help with that job fit, to optimize the individual. Any other questions? All right, I just want to thank you all for taking the time, and those that stood around to listen. I know I'll be around if you have any questions, but I hope you all, those that are in the contracting career field, I thank you very much for what you do every day. And those of us that want to join us in the Army career field, we're ready to sign you up this afternoon. So thank you very much.